It's the world's best shows from Las Vegas. It's Alex Belfield at the Monte Carlo, and I'm with a man who really does put on one of the world's best shows ever. He's a master illusionist and magician who can actually do magic. It seems like today, Lance Burton, not everybody can do magic in these magic shows.
Well, I'm not very technical. So is that thing recording? Isn't it supposed to be lighting up? Okay, yes.
No, that's working. This is it.
I'm a magician, but I'm technically challenged.
I press one button and there we are, live on air.
Yeah, no, I can do magic, but I can't work my computer very well.
It is amazing what you do. And I love your sleight of hand. I was telling you earlier, I saw a program at Christmas, the top 100 magic tricks of all time.
Oh, yes.
And you were all the way through it. What I love about you is that you really are a master of the card tricks and of the little tiny tricks that we see so few of now. It seems as if you want to come to Vegas, you got to make a card disappear, you got to make the Eiffel Tower disappear, you got to make Vegas disappear. That's more technology than magic, though, really, isn't it?
Well, I think there's all kinds of different magic. There's all different approaches to magic. I do some big illusions in the show. I make a car disappear, and I make a car float in the air, and I vanish from the stage, and I come down the chandelier. And I enjoy doing the big illusions, but also enjoy doing the sleight of hand magic, and the more intimate magic. And I like doing the audience participation type magic. And so I think for a well-rounded magic show, you have to have a little of everything. If you do the whole show with one type of trick, it would get, I think, boring rather quickly.
The first time I saw you was at the Royal Variety in London, and you wowed the audience there. I think that was the first time in Britain that we really realised on a mass scale how brilliant you are, and it kind of made your name in Britain as a top magician. Here in Vegas, you're it for magic, aren't you?
Well, I've been in Las Vegas a long time. I've been doing magic here 26 years, and I've been fortunate to be working all that time. I've only had 3 jobs in 26 years. I was at the Tropicana Hotel for 9 years, then the Hacienda Hotel for 5 years, and now we've been at the Monte Carlo for 12 years. So I'm just thankful to have a job.
I understand there's another 15 years to go on your contract. I have never heard of such a thing in show business. Outside of Vegas, contracts like that are never given, are they?
I don't know. I don't keep track of all that, the contracts. I just show up every day. And if my name is still on the marquee, I come inside and I do a show. One day I'll show up and it'll say, appearing nightly, Wayne Newton, and I'll leave.
I've had that happen before where I've gone into a radio station and the fob key doesn't work anymore and I know my time is up.
Oh, somebody forgot to make the call. Yeah.
And you get back in your car and realise it's not you on the air anymore. It's heartbreaking. The audience reaction tonight was so nice, and seeing the kids as well. People just want a good old entertainer, don't they? And you put that in front of them and the kids still love it.
Well, I try to be first and foremost a good entertainer. I try to make sure when people come into the show that they have a good time, and when they leave, they're happy and they're talking about the show, and they're not thinking about their troubles at home. They're not thinking about the $50,000 they lost in the casino. That's part of my job. But in the context of being a good entertainer, I try to be a good magician and hopefully show them something amazing.
I think you've got the nicest theatre here in Vegas, and I've been in most of them in the last week. It reminds me very much of a West End theatre. It must be modelled on that.
That's exactly what it was modelled on. Back in the 80s, when I was at the Tropicana Hotel, I made several trips to England. I did the Paul Daniels show a couple times, and I did a show called The Best of Magic, and I did the Royal Variety performance, and I did the Sunday evening show at the Palladium with Jimmy Tarbuck. And every time I was in London, I had a wonderful time performing on the shows, but I also had a wonderful time going out to the West End and seeing some of the plays and some of the musicals. And I was always struck by the architecture and just the physical theater when you walk into a London West End theater. So when the Monte Carlo Hotel was being planned, they came and hired me before they actually built the hotel. And they said, if you'll come over and sign a long-term contract with the Monte Carlo, we'll build you a theater. And I said, fine, I want a London West End theater. And that's what they built.
It's interesting today, when you mention names like Paul Daniels, he's not cool anymore. Magic seems to have moved on. It's more Derren Brown, people like that, who have taken magic to kind of a modern extreme. It is interesting, though, with the reinvention of programs like Britain's Got Talent. I've got a feeling it's going to come back big time on the TV. And it's just so great that you're here doing it regardless of trends.
Well, yeah. I mean, I started doing magic when I was a kid, and when I was a kid, magic wasn't particularly cool, but it was what I was drawn to, and it was the focus of my life. I've seen some of Darren Brown's stuff on television here in the States, and he's very creative and very good. I'm very impressed with him. Paul Daniels is absolutely a wonderful entertainer. You talk about a magician who's an entertainer. Paul Daniels is one of those guys who can walk into a nightclub or a theater or even a party of 20 people, and he can walk in with just basically a briefcase, and he can get up and do an hour-and-a-half show or a 2-hour show all by himself, and he can just rock the place. He's a real pro, and I have great admiration for him.
He loves the people, and I think that's what you've got as well. A magician that's just doing the show at you is not as effective as one who has you involved in the show, and I think that's where you and Paul come into your own.
Yeah, it's a difference between getting up and doing a monologue and getting up and doing a dialogue with another actor. If you're doing a monologue, you're just basically doing your thing on autopilot by rote. Although there may be some internal, thing going on in your head, but with a magic show, I think you have to have a dialogue, and the dialogue is with the audience. And I really enjoy the parts of the show where I can interact with the audience, and I can talk to them and ask them where they're from and get people up on stage, because it's always a little surprising for me. Even after doing magic for over 40 years, I still get nights when I get surprised by what somebody in the audience will say or do.
Let's talk about being you. It must be interesting. I mean, your face is everywhere in Vegas. You are up there with all the top headliners.
I apologize for that. I'm sorry for that.
Can you go anywhere without being noticed? What is your life like here in Vegas?
Well, I live a very quiet life. I try to pace myself. After the show, I'm not out in clubs and drinking and carousing. I live a very quiet life. I go home and have a little supper and go to bed. And so I'm really not out that much. But when I am out, sometimes people will recognize me, and they're always very nice. They'll tell me they've been in to see the show, or their brother or sister was up on stage with me, or it's always usually very nice.
When you look at your career and the programs you've been on, The Tonight Show, for example, you continue to be on that show every now and again when you choose to do it. It's people like you I so admire, because you're the guys who are just slogging away every single day, and you continue doing it, and then occasionally you offer to do a show like this where we're very grateful, or even a TV show. It's not really showbiz, is it? Because it's a proper job. You're not in it for a couple of days and a few glamorous dinners free in a nightclub.
Well, yeah, it's a little different than maybe most people would imagine if they see one of the movies, about show business. It's a job like any other, and I think you have to take your work serious. I mean, you have to be serious about learning your craft and always improving. And that's the thing I love about magic, is even after decades and decades, you can still learn. You can still grow as an artist. So as I say, you have to take that commitment seriously, even if what we do at the end of the day is not a serious business. I mean, entertainers, we're not finding the cure for cancer.
Comedians say that there's only about 3 jokes. It's just the way that you tell them. I think in magic, there's probably only a few tricks. It's the way you decide to put them across on stage. Is that down to your imagination? Because the show is so creative, and it is a full theatrical production.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. You've hit upon it. It's, every song that is ever written, by Beethoven to the Beatles, were written with, those 8 notes on the piano. And the magic's is similar. There are a finite number of effects, but the challenge is to find a way, a new creative way to do it, so that people are seeing something new and fresh.
Congratulations on your show. It is such a thrill to see you live and see you perform, and an even bigger thrill to talk to you. You don't need to talk to the riffraff like me. Lance Burton's here at the Monte Carlo, and this is the world's best shows from Las Vegas, and we've just seen one. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
It's nearly midnight, and he's done 2 shows tonight. He's not feeling brilliantly, but I have to say, we would never have known during the show because it was just spectacular. Thank you so much for talking to us, Lance Burton.
Thank you, Alex. My pleasure to be here.
How are you? Because I know you've not been feeling too well this evening. You even saw a doctor in between the 2 shows.
Yeah, the doctor came over in between shows, gave me a shot, and gave me some pills. So I'll be fine in a couple of days. It's in Las Vegas, it's been very, very windy the last couple of months, and we have these terrible allergies that go around now. Everybody's been, and I thought that's what I had, allergies, but it turns out I had a little cold or flu bug.
Well, I wish you well with it. I hope you get better soon, because it is literally relentless. I know that you only have 6 weeks off a year. You are signed to something that I have never heard of before in the history of show business, a 13-year contract with the Monte Carlo Casino. That is outrageous. Why would you sign that?
Well, in show business, if you've got a job, you're successful. I mean, that's most people in show business are unemployed. And then when they offered a long-term contract, I jumped at the chance, and I believe it was, when we signed it, the longest contract in the history of show business. And we've been here 9 years, and we have 4 more to go on this contract.
I have never heard of such a contract, and they've even built your own theatre, which is remarkable in itself, because it's like a West End theatre. I've seen no other theatre like it, even in America.
Well, that's and it is a West End theater. That's what it was designed after. Back in the 1980s, I was working at the Tropicana Hotel in the Folies Bergère. I was doing a 12-minute act, and it was quite easy for me to take time off to go do industrial shows or television shows. And I made several trips to London. My first couple of trips there, I did the Paul Daniels show on the BBC, and then I came back and I did the Sunday night show from the Palladium, and then I did the Royal Variety Performance, and I did a couple shows for Tim's TV. And every time I was in London, I would go out to see the theater, the shows at night, and I just fell in love with those beautiful theaters in the West End of London. And when the opportunity came up here in Las Vegas, they were going to build me my own theater, I said, okay, I want a London West End theater. I think that would be really neat to have in Las Vegas.
I think you've got the best of both worlds, because the problem with our London theatres are, A, they're too small, B, they're too old, C, there's too many things that obstruct views. But you've got this fabulous new facility where you're able to entertain nearly 1,500 people a night. Can I ask you a question that dawned on me during the show? Do you ever question why they've invested so much money in you? What is it you've got that other magicians haven't?
I ask myself that question every day. I have this reoccurring nightmare. One day I'm going to show up to work, and my name and my picture are gone from the marquee. They've changed the name of the theater, and they've changed the locks on the doors. And I'm trying to get in to do my show, and somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, "You know what, Lance? We finally figured out we made a huge mistake. You have to leave now."
I've actually come into work twice during my career, and my security pass has not worked, and I have been fired without being told. That's the worst.
No. So that's my reoccurring nightmare. They're going to discover I'm a fraud and I have no talent.
Listen, let's talk about this show, because it really is spectacular. How do you do the tricks?
Well, very carefully.
We should say there are so many different styles, and what I love about you is you do the very close-up magic that a lot of magicians don't do now. Some of your competitors, let's call them that, just do the spectacular, almost technical tricks, but you actually stand there and produce animals from your person, and we're not just talking 1, 2, 3, 4. At one point you produced 6 different ducks somewhere from your person. Now, A, how do you do that, and B, how did you get them to follow you around the stage?
Well, that's one of my favorite parts of the show with the ducks. Ducks are just funny animals on stage. There's just something incongruous about having a farm animal walking around a stage. But when I set out to do this show, I wanted to try to explore all the different types of magic. The act I started out with was a sleight of hand act. Manipulating cards and candles and doves. And then I got into doing more the larger illusions and the audience participation type of tricks. And I enjoy doing all of those. And I think to have a good magic show, that's what you need. You need that variety. You need those. You need the big spectacular tricks like making a car disappear, and then to offset that, you need a trick, with a kid from the audience, and you're pulling silver dollars out from behind his ear. To me, that's the fun part, is mixing and matching and and taking the audience on this whole journey of all the different types of magic.
Going back to the ducks, can you actually train them to follow you around a stage, or is that just luck?
They actually are trained. That is an example of taking something which is innate in an animal and using that to your advantage. Ducks are naturally social animals, and if you ever have been on a farm and you see a mama duck with the little babies, wherever she walks, those baby ducks will just follow her single file all around the farm. And I've taken that sort of innate genetic trait in the animal and have used that in the show, and it looks like they're just following my commands.
Talking of which, we've got another friend just joined us now. Who's this then?
This is my dog, Monte. He's a golden retriever. He's 9 years old, and he's getting a little gray in the beard now, but aren't we all? And Monte, actually, they named the hotel after him. Monte Carlo.
Isn't that fantastic? I mean, this is a cute dog. I mean, do you ever do tricks with him?
Sometimes he was feeling a little under the weather the last couple of days. He was actually in the first show, but he didn't appear in this show. In the street scene where all the people are walking across the street and we have all the buildings there, he actually usually walks across with some of the people on stage.
Let's talk about the show again, because it really is the most theatrical show I've ever seen. It is like a big Broadway production with all the scenery and the lights, and particularly the music as well. It all makes it just the perfect package. How long did you take to get this show together as good as it is now?
40 years. I started doing magic when I was 5 years old. I'm 45 now. And to me, that's the wonderful thing about magic is you can be in this art or this craft for 40 years and you can still learn. You can still be learning. And I think that's one of the things that has always attracted me to magic. And I've had this conversation with magicians much older than I, up in their 70s and 80s, and they're still learning. And what more can you ask for to have something that's really your hobby and that became your profession and you make your living and it never gets stale. You're always learning something new.
What is the feeling like when you come to Vegas and you drive down the strip and see your name everywhere, and moreover see a 100-foot picture of yourself in front of the hotel? I mean, that is not normal. How do you deal with that? And what was your first reaction that day when they put your name right next to the Monte Carlo brand of this huge casino and resort?
Well, I mean, that was a dream come true. That was something anybody that gets into show business, whether you're a magician or a singer or a comedian, you always dream about seeing your name in lights. It was really the culmination of a long journey up to that point. When I first came to Las Vegas, I was 22 years old, and I was just happy. I was just happy to be working. I mean, still am. But when I first opened in Las Vegas, I was just doing a 12-minute act, and I didn't have billing or anything, but I was just so happy to be making my living doing magic, and having this theater and doing my own show and the TV specials. That's all just icing on the cake. I'm just thankful to be employed, really.
One of the things that is amazing to me about people that I've interviewed for this program is that you all have that X factor. You're not just a magician, you're a performer, and you have that thing that makes the audience love you and they want to be part of your show. I mean, were you born a performer? I can't believe that you could have been trained to do this, because it's just so natural to watch.
It's all about sincerity. Once you learn to fake that, you've got everything covered. No, you know what it is. I know what you're saying. I have friends that I've known for 30 years. There was a fella in just a few nights ago. We've been friends for 30 years, and we met when we were teenagers. We were in the youth contest at a magician's convention, and we were competing. It was a contest, and the winner got a $500 gift certificate or something. And And so I have friends that go back that far through magic, and some of them have gone on, like me, and have made this their life's work, and some of them have gone on to other things. This fellow that I'm thinking of, he actually is very successful in the computer business, and does very, very well. But he still loves magic. That's still in his heart. And we were talking about it, and it was funny when we were kids, because he was a very, very good magician. Technically, he would come out and he would do this beautiful sleight of hand, and it was just really technical, and you could tell he'd practiced for hundreds and hundreds of hours, but he never smiled on stage. And that was kind of the gag, the joke amongst us all. He's so good, but he never smiles. He never looks at the audience. He was just so serious about it. So there's an example of a guy who wasn't a natural performer. And I think what it happens with all performers, it happens on stage. It doesn't happen in rehearsal. You rehearse your song, or you rehearse your jokes, or you rehearse your magic tricks, and then you go out on stage and you do them. And about the time you're doing your 100th or 200th performance, something just kicks in, and you feel comfortable on stage, and you start becoming yourself. And I think that's the key, is being comfortable and being yourself on stage.
I have to be honest with you, one thing did annoy me about your show.
Oh, what was that?
Well, I'd have liked to have been in your position. I would have loved to have seen the 1,500 people's reaction when, for example, you made the car fly. That must be just something that you can't explain, how wonderful it is to see mouths open on the floor, people just totally amazed at what you've done. That must be a feeling that very few people get.
Well, you're right. I got into magic because I saw a magician when I was a little boy, and I was the kid that went up on stage, and he started pulling silver dollars out from behind my ear. He was a very fine magician from my hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. His name was Harry Collins, and he became my first mentor and a good friend of mine. But that was the first time I'd ever seen a magic show, and I thought it was real. I thought this guy had real magic powers, and I was so amazed, and I was so fascinated, and I wanted to learn more about it. Then later on, I discovered that it wasn't real magic. It was an illusion. It was a trick. But that was actually good news, because then I figured, I could learn to do this if I worked real hard. So I studied and read the books in the library on magic. And so now, after being in magic for all these years, I don't get to be amazed that often, although it still happens. And when it does, it's wonderful. I go see somebody like Penn and Teller. They always blow me away. They always amaze me. When I see a magician, a really good magician, and he really fools me bad, I love that feeling, because that's why I got into magic. But I can experience that every night vicariously through the audience. So some of my favorite moments are just, as you say, looking at the people's faces. There's one point in my show where I'm on stage and I disappear and I reappear in the middle of the audience, and I'm blowing a whistle, and people turn around and I'm right there behind them. And I've seen some amazing reactions in that part of the show. I've seen people throw their drink in the air, and I've seen people fall out of their seats, and I've seen people scream, and I've seen people just look up and their mouth drops open, and they give you that trout look, that yeah, and that's the fun part of seeing people's reactions.
This is such an enormous production. I presume it's virtually impossible to tour this show as it is, because there's, as I say, you make a car disappear at some points. There's big tricks.
We have taken it on the road, a version of the show on the road. I mean, obviously, there's some things we can't take. At one point in the show, I disappear and I come down the chandelier in the middle of the audience. Well, that's built into the theater, so I can't take that with me. But we took this show to, we've taken it to Japan a couple times, and we've taken it to California 3 or 4 times, and to the East Coast. And when we tour, we take a different version of the show. The touring show, usually they want you to do 2 hours, and in Vegas they only want you to do an hour and a half, because they got to get the people out back to the casino, where they make the real money. So when we do the touring show, but we actually do take the vanishing car with us. I usually open the second half of the show with the vanishing car.
Well, congratulations on this show. It really is spectacular. It took my breath away at certain parts in the show today. You do things that really do defy belief, and congratulations on all your effort that goes into it. Will you bring the show to London at some point, or to the UK? Because we'd love to see it.
I would. That's one of my dreams. At some point in my career, I do want to take the show, and there's a few places I want to go, and I do definitely want to come and play London and play the West End and catch up with all my friends there, and And Paul Daniels was just in town last week. I saw my old friend Paul Daniels.
Yeah, that's remarkable because the funny thing about Paul is that he had huge ratings in the UK when he was on, 25 million viewers. Nowadays, he's kind of cliched and he's old-fashioned and they seem to poo-poo what he does. But in Vegas, he's still pulling crowds, which is remarkable.
Well, in Las Vegas, he came in, actually, he was in America to do a lecture at the Magic Castle. And a friend of mine and Paul's is Mac King, who works down at Harrah's Hotel. And Mac was taking off a week, and Mac called up Paul and talked him into filling in for him for a week. And so basically Paul was here doing that as a favor to Mac. But Paul Daniels really is one of the most highly respected magicians in the world. And, he is one of the few guys that can walk in with just a carry-on bag, just a small little satchel. He can walk into a room and set up and do an hour show for a bunch of people who don't know who the hell he is, and he can just rock the place. I mean, he just gets, he's just amazing.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us today. My very final question has to be living in Las Vegas. It is crazy. The food is here, there, and everywhere. You could end up, 500 pounds if you're not careful. Do you love living in Vegas, or is it a nuisance? How are you finding it?
I wanted to move to Las Vegas since I was about 12 or 14 years old. We used to have a talk show here in America called the Merv Griffin Show. And every year, Merv would come to Vegas and do a week's worth of shows broadcasting from Vegas. And I used to watch those shows because he used to have all the magicians on that were working the Las Vegas Strip. And I somehow got it into my mind when I was a kid that that's where you go if you want to be a professional magician, Las Vegas. So I've been here 23 years now. And this was my dream, to move to Vegas. I love it here. It's a great town. Once you get over the fact that you're in the middle of a desert.
Well, thank you so much for sparing the time to talk to us today. Please don't sign any more 13-year contracts. Come and see us in the UK, tour the world, because this is a show that really needs to be seen by so many people. It is remarkable. It's on at the Monte Carlo Resort and Casino, and it is breathtaking. And congratulations on the effort that you've put into this show. It's just a spectacle to see. Lance Burton, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Alex. My pleasure.